Amelia entered the building early in the morning, just like any other day, but no one noticed her as she moved quietly through the side door. She pushed her cleaning cart at her usual steady pace, wearing her dark green uniform like armor. Her face was calm, unassuming, and showed none of the emotions she kept hidden. To the executives, she was invisible, a mere cleaning lady who wiped down their desks, emptied their trash cans, and exchanged polite nods with the few who acknowledged her. This had been Amelia's life at Vanguard Steele, a thriving corporation in the heart of Dallas, Texas, for years. Now in her mid-50s, she had grown used to the routine and the dismissive looks. She often overheard their jokes when they thought she wasn't listening. They treated her presence as an inconvenience. Just last week, someone had muttered, "She's not even doing anything right now," as they finished their meeting, and she waited to clean the conference room. But Amelia never reacted. She kept her head down, her hands steady, because she knew better than to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. What they didn't know, what no one in that office knew, was that Amelia had a secret, one so powerful it could turn the entire building upside down. But Amelia wasn't impulsive. She believed in patience, in watching and waiting. Today, however, as she worked down the brightly lit hallways, her calm exterior hid the fact that she was nearing her breaking point. The morning unfolded like any other. She polished the glass doors to perfection, vacuumed the thick carpet in the lobby, and organized the cluttered desks of those who never seemed to care about their mess. The buzz of conversation about big deals and promotions floated through the air, but one conversation caught her attention. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the voices were loud and impossible to ignore. "The shareholders' meeting is next week," one executive said with smug arrogance, "and we've got nothing to worry about. The board loves the numbers, and the CEO is untouchable. No one in their right mind would challenge him." Amelia paused for a moment, gripping the handle of her cart tighter. She knew something they didn't. They had no idea how wrong they were, but she didn't let her thoughts linger. There was still work to do. She had to be ready for what was coming. Vanguard Steele prided itself on its sleek, modern image. The headquarters, a towering glass building in the middle of Dallas, was often featured in business magazines as a symbol of corporate success. But inside, the reality was far less glamorous. The culture was ruthless. The higher you climbed, the less you seemed to care about those below you. Amelia had spent nearly a decade in those hallways, quietly observing. She saw promotions handed out to the loudest voices, not the most qualified workers. She witnessed whispered deals behind closed doors and the way mistakes were covered up by pinning blame on the powerless. And then there was the CEO, Dominic Vaughn. Dominic was a man who commanded respect through fear. His voice boomed in meetings, silencing even the boldest executives. To him, success was everything, and people were tools to be used. Amelia had overheard his sarcastic remarks about employees who didn't fit the image. "She's still here?" he had once said about one of the older secretaries. "Why haven't we retired her yet? It's not like she's adding value." The company was rife with unethical practices, all swept under the rug. Bonuses were quietly cut for lower-level staff, even as the leadership team celebrated record-breaking profits. Amelia had heard about inflated expense reports, shady client dealings, and even the quiet firing of a whistleblower who had dared to speak up. The cleaning staff, including Amelia, bore the brunt of the toxic culture. She had seen her coworkers brought to tears after being scolded for a speck of dust. She had seen their paychecks stagnate while their workload increased. And there was the constant dismissal of their humanity, the way people avoided eye contact, spoke down to them, or treated them. And there was the constant dismissal of their humanity, the way people avoided eye contact, spoke down to them, or treated them like part of the furniture. One incident still burned in Amelia's memory. A young intern had accidentally spilled coffee near Dominic's office. The intern froze, clearly terrified, as Dominic rounded the corner. "Are you kidding me?" he snapped, his eyes darting to Amelia. "Clean this up," he barked at her, as if she were at fault. The intern apologized profusely, but Dominic waved him off with a dismissive hand. To him, people like Amelia and the intern were nothing more than background noise. These moments had piled up over the years, each one like a stone added to a growing mountain. Amelia's patience was remarkable, but she wasn't immune to the weight of it all. She felt the sting of disrespect, the exhaustion of being invisible, but she had never been the type to crumble. Instead, she stored those moments away like ammunition, waiting for the day she would need them. The employees around her might not have noticed her silence, but it spoke volumes. Amelia was always watching, always listening. The more she saw, the more she realized that the company's success came at the expense of its humanity. But Amelia wasn't just taking notes. She was quietly planning, and soon, the pieces would start to fall into place. For years, Amelia had kept her secret tightly guarded, not out of fear, but out of strategy. She wasn't just a cleaning lady. She was the largest shareholder in Vanguard and Steele. It was a title she had inherited after the unexpected passing of her late husband, Victor Steele. Victor had been a quiet investor in the company's early days, accumulating shares when no one believed in its potential. By the time of his death, those shares had become a controlling stake. At first, Amelia didn't know what to do with this unexpected power. She wasn't a corporate strategist. She was just Amelia, a woman who had raised 2 kids and found solace in routine. But over time, she began to realize the value of her position. Being invisible gave her an advantage. She could observe without being noticed, listen without raising suspicion, and learn everything she needed to know about the people who thought they ran the company. The moment that pushed her over the edge came during a routine evening shift. Amelia had just finished wiping down the executive lounge when she overheard 2 senior managers laughing over drinks. They were talking about layoffs, joking about how easy it was to cut dead weight without anyone caring. "Some of these people act like their jobs matter," one said with a laugh. "They don't realize how replaceable they are." Amelia stood frozen behind the door, her hand gripping the cleaning cloth. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These were real people with families, bills, and dreams. To these men, however, they were nothing more than expendable assets. That night, Amelia sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea and a notepad. She started writing, unsure where it would lead, but knowing she couldn't stay silent anymore. By the time the sun rose, she had outlined a plan that would change everything. Her first step was to dig deeper. Using her access to the building, she gathered information most people wouldn't think twice about. She took mental notes on conversations, paid attention to schedules, and discreetly glanced at documents left on desks. She wasn't stealing or snooping, she was simply putting the pieces together. The second step was to call in reinforcements. Amelia had trusted allies outside the company, lawyers, financial analysts, and former employees who had left on bad terms. She shared what she knew and asked for their advice. Slowly, they helped her craft a strategy to expose the toxic culture and secure the company's future. The final step was the hardest. Confronting the CEO and the board would require more than just evidence. It would require courage, composure, and a deep belief in her own worth. She practiced her speech in front of the mirror, her voice steady but firm. This wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had ever been dismissed, underestimated, or treated as less than. The shareholders' meeting was less than a week away, and Amelia was ready. She wasn't just walking into that room as a cleaning lady. She was walking in as someone who held the future of the company in her hands. The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived. Executives strutted through the hallways, confident about another year of record profits. None of them noticed Amelia pushing her cleaning cart toward the top-floor conference room, her face calm and unreadable as always. Inside the boardroom, Dominic Steele sat at the head of the table, his posture commanding, his smirk exuding arrogance. Amelia entered quietly as she always did, and placed a pitcher of water on the side table. No one looked at her. To them, she was just part of the backdrop. But this time she didn't leave. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the room. Heads turned, confused and slightly annoyed. Dominic barely glanced at her. "We're in the middle of something," he said dismissively. "I know," Amelia replied, her tone steady but firm. "That's why I'm here." Dominic leaned back in his chair, a condescending smile spreading across his face. "Unless you're here to clean up after us, I suggest you leave." Amelia didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, pulling a folder from her cart and placing it on the table. The logo of Vanguard and Steele was blazoned on the front, along with the words, "Shareholders Report." The room fell silent. Dominic's smirk faltered as Amelia began to speak. "For years," she said, her voice unwavering, "I've watched this company thrive on the backs of people you refuse to see. I've watched employees mistreated, ethical lines crossed, and profits prioritized over humanity. And I've stayed quiet. Until now." Murmurs erupted around the table. One of the board members leaned forward, squinting at the folder. "What is this?" "This," Amelia said, opening the folder, "is proof. Proof of the unethical practices, the mismanagement, and the outright disregard for the people who make this company run. Dominic's voice boomed across the room. Who do you think you are coming in here and making accusations? You're a cleaning lady. Amelia met his glare with calmness that shook the room. No, Mr. Steele, she said. I'm the majority shareholder of Vanguard Steele, and today I'm firing you. The shock rippled through the room like a thunderclap. Dominic's face turned pale, his confident demeanor crumbling as the words sank in. You're joking, he said, his voice trembling slightly. No, Mr. Steele, Amelia replied. I'm not. She turned to the board members, her gaze sharp. I've spent years gathering evidence. It's all here. The inflated expense reports, the unethical layoffs, the harassment complaints you've buried. I have the power to vote you out, and I'm using it. The room erupted in chaos. Dominic tried to argue, his voice rising in desperation, but the board members quickly realized the gravity of the situation. One by one, they turned to Amelia, asking questions, skimming through the folder and confirming her claims. It didn't take long for the vote to happen. Amelia had done her homework, and the evidence left no room for doubt. Dominic Steele was removed from his position that same afternoon, his protests falling on deaf ears as security escorted him out of the building. Amelia stood in the boardroom, her back straight, her expression calm. The executives who had once ignored her now looked at her with awe and guilt, but Amelia wasn't looking for their approval. She had already set her sights on what came next. The news of Dominic Steele's dismissal spread through the company like wildfire. By the next morning, the office was buzzing with disbelief and speculation. How could the cleaning lady, quiet, unassuming Amelia, have been the majority shareholder all along? Whispers filled the break rooms and hallways, but this time they weren't dismissive. They were filled with respect, admiration, and even a tinge of guilt. Amelia, however, didn't bask in the attention. She returned to the office the next day, not with a mop and bucket, but with a clipboard and a plan. She wasn't just here to fire a toxic CEO. She was here to change the company's future. In the weeks that followed, Amelia worked tirelessly to implement changes. She started by addressing the company's most glaring injustices. The cleaning staff and other undervalued employees received immediate raises and benefits, reflecting their critical contributions to the company. She made sure they felt seen and respected. She established a dedicated ethics committee to oversee all company operations and introduced a third-party watchdog group to monitor complaints of harassment, discrimination, and fraud. For the first time, employees had a safe space to voice their concerns without fear of retaliation. Amelia knew that changing the culture at Vanguard Steele required more than policy updates. It required a shift in mindset. She implemented mandatory workshops focused on ethical leadership, inclusivity, and employee well-being. Promotions were no longer about who shouted the loudest in meetings, but about who delivered meaningful results while uplifting their teams. The office, once cold and cutthroat, began to transform. Employees who had once been overlooked now felt empowered to contribute ideas. Amelia insisted on regular town hall meetings, where employees at every level could share feedback directly with leadership. She listened intently, taking notes, and implemented their suggestions wherever possible. One of the most significant changes came in the form of profit sharing. Under Amelia's leadership, a portion of the company's annual profits was redistributed to all employees, not just the executives. It was a bold move, but it sent a powerful message. Everyone's hard work mattered. The media caught wind of the dramatic turnaround at Vanguard Steele, dubbing it the Amelia effect. Articles celebrated the unassuming woman who had quietly observed the company's dysfunction for years, only to emerge as its savior. News anchors marveled at how she had turned the company's focus from greed to growth with integrity. But Amelia wasn't interested in fame. For her, the transformation of the company was about people, the ones who had been ignored, underestimated, or mistreated for far too long. She made it her mission to ensure that Vanguard Steele became a place where everyone, regardless of their title, felt valued. One afternoon, as Amelia walked through the office, she was stopped by Ethan, the young intern who had spilled coffee near Dominic Steele's office all those months ago. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere, "for everything you've changed in this place." Amelia smiled warmly. "No," she said, "we've changed this place together." Outside, the skyline of Dallas shimmered in the late afternoon sun. The towering glass building that had once symbolized corporate greed now stood as a beacon of hope and resilience. As Amelia stepped into her car, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. She had taken on a challenge that many thought was impossible and proved that change was not only possible but powerful when driven by integrity and compassion. Her story was a reminder that strength doesn't always come from being loud or visible. Sometimes it comes from quiet observation, patience, and the courage to act when the time is right. With a sense of calm and fulfillment, Amelia drove away, not to fade into the background, but to embrace a new chapter of her life, knowing she had left an indelible mark on the world. If this story inspired you or gave you inspiration, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends and family. And hey, if you want more inspirational and emotional stories, like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below about this story, and if you enjoyed this story, give it a big thumbs up. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that touch hearts and inspire change. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.